Hello. Today we're with Miss Sobrinski, certified astrologer. Hi, how are you doing, Miss Sobrinski?
Good. How are you doing
I'm,
today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Especially because I'm here with you.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. So I was hoping you might fill us in a little bit on the astrology basics and why they might be helpful for understanding relationships.
That is a beautiful question and is a really great way. Sorry, I told my kids to be quiet. Um, a really great way to,
My house.
yeah. But it's a really great way to really dive into somebody's subconscious that you normally don't see, or if they don't present it to you, like in a social relationship, you're not really getting deep into their unconscious. So being able to look at their chart kind of gives you just a little inkling of some ways that they might process certain things that you're not actually seeing outwardly. So astrology is really like the study of someone's birth chart. So what that means is that it references the placements of the stars and the planets pretty much right at the moment when you were born. So you may be born at the same time and the same date as somebody, but the place of where you were born really makes an impact on the placements of the signs in your chart.
Right, because there are a lot of people I've met that are also Capricorns like myself that are similar to me, but there are also some people like Misty Lorenzo is a Capricorn, and we are actually quite different.
Mm-hmm. Right. So just before getting into it, Mrs. Nappy is actually talking about just your sun sign, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. So with astrology, there are actually very many different methods on how to read somebody's chart and how to kind of plot where the signs are. Like there's something called Vedic astrology, which is not what I do. There's also Celtic astrology as well. So that's also very different. The signs are also different in Celtic. So that's a whole nother ball game. But in general, like most of the charts are really, they're very similar, but they're just the ways of interpreting are a little bit different. So depending on who you go to, you might get a slightly different idea into what your personality or somebody else's personality is. So in most charts, there are 12 planets. So sun, moon, rising, they're all called planets. And then there's the general planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and all that stuff. And then so each planet relates to a different sign based on your chart. Again, you might have similar signs in different placements on your chart, but everybody has all of these in their birth chart. So this is kind of why your chart or somebody who is a Capricorn may not act like another person who is a Capricorn, because there are so many different aspects to an astrology chart that may factor into their personality. Yeah. Sorry, hold on a second.
That's okay.
I'm going to mute myself.
I believe Miss Sobrinski is wearing her little tarot card earrings. Those are adorable, aren't they? I just like to fill dead air, to be honest. You can probably hear people walking around in my house.
Sorry, we're working with slime.
Oh, that's fun.
From somebody's house. I don't know whose house.
My slime.
Okay, so today what we're going to actually be focusing on is what we're going to call the big three. So that's kind of what our astrologers call them. And those are the three planets that are basically the foundations of your personality. So for example, as what Mrs. Nappy was referring to, that the sun sign refers to your ego. So that is the personality that you present outwardly to everyone and how others see you. And in an analogy, because I know English, your sun sign is kind of like the leading actor in the movie that you call your life. All right. It gives your personality that basic outline of how you're going to act throughout your whole entire life. And then we have our moon sign. So the moon is typically associated with the constant push and pull of your emotions. So thus the moon sign represents how you process your emotions, your instincts, and your unconscious. So again, this is not something that most people really project outwardly to other people, unless you're like a Cancer, which again, we'll actually get into later, because that's a water sign. Water signs are associated with emotions. So the moon sign represents the side of you that reacts before you really have time to process anything. So if you were just kind of to let go and do whatever, your moon sign would just take over and you would just be running instinctually. That's kind of where your moon sign is.
Okay.
And this is the side of your personality that you tend to keep hidden. As I said before, you keep hidden from everybody because, again, this is like your inner self. It's like your core.
That makes sense because I believe, if I'm speaking correctly, my moon sign is Libra, which deals a lot with relationships and balance, right?
Right. And I said, we'll get into that later as well, as we kind of go along this astrology journey. And then so in relation to the actor analogy that I kind of put, it's kind of how that actor feels and processes the emotions of the lines that you're given to portray whatever, you know, your life pretty much. So it really affects the way that you produce how you're reacting to your environment.
Okay.
And then lastly, you have your rising sign, which is also called your ascendant. This placement, or whatever sign that you have in this placement, is like your outwardly demeanor. And to a greater extent, it kind of determines on how the outside world looks at you. It's your image. It is the first indication of when you were born. So it's like what's rising over the horizon right at the moment when you were born. So this is like your first taste of independence, individuality. It's kind of how the world sees you before you even say anything. It characterizes the way that you deal with others and your distinctive style of how you interact with people. So this is kind of also known as like your soul. Most children tend to display this sign as opposed to their sun sign, because once you get older, your sun sign, your ego tends to take over. So this is a little bit of psychology kind of goes into it.
So much sense with my kids.
So like up until they hit about puberty is kind of when your ego starts to become more aware. And it tends to kind of start to take over because your thought process kind of gets in there.
If my daughter is Cancer rising and my other daughter is Taurus rising, does that mean as they age, they will be less like my husband and mother?
Yes. Which I know both of your children are Aries, and so is my older one.
One of my best friends.
Right.
I'm like, they're nothing like her.
Yeah. So, you know, Aries are very headstrong. They're very strong-willed. They're independent. They're determined. But as you said, with the Cancer rising, Cancers are very emotional. They take everything personally. And so because they're still young, that's the way that they're presenting themselves to the world without the world affecting them yet. And then whereas the Tauruses are stubborn, they're immovable, as we're going to get to later, which is funny. There's a lot of similar signs that rotate in your family, that they just love, like they just love everything. They like to feel everything. They take their time with everything. As I know that your younger daughter tends to take forever to eat her food. Yeah. So again, this is the rising sign is before the world kind of gets into your skin, gets underneath your skin. That's how you relate to the world. It kind of speaks to your coping mechanisms and how you're going to react to anything that life throws at you. This is the place where you actually feel the most comfortable when you're entering an uncomfortable emotional situation. So for me, I'm a Gemini rising. If I get uncomfortable, I tend to just start talking. So if I don't even know what I'm talking about, like, you know, if I meet somebody for the first time and I don't know what to say, I just literally just start talking about nothing because I'm uncomfortable. So I'm uncomfortable with silence. And so I start talking a lot. So it's just like what you kind of just fall into.
Right.
To display outwardly. Again, you don't display your moon sign, you would display your rising sign. So it's, again, these are bits and parts of your whole personality put together.
Very cool. So does that kind of cover the astrology basics, you would say?
Yeah, so most people, they just really tend to look at that because all the other planets, they dive more specifically into different aspects of your personality. So Mercury is the way that you think and process, because Mercury is the planet of intelligence. It is communication. Hence why everybody's like, when we go into Mercury retrograde, which just means that Mercury seems to be spinning the opposite direction, which is actually not, but it looks like it. That everybody's like, oh, your technology is going to go bad. You know, your conversations are going to like be weird. Like, yeah, that's really what it means. I mean, yeah, I guess like astrologically, like, I guess it makes a little bit of sense, but at the same time, that's why people say like your phones aren't going to work, your computers aren't going to work, because that's a form of technology in this age. But if you really think about it, like back then there was also Mercury retrograde. So when there wasn't technology, what would happen? So I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
But that's my own opinion.
Okay, cool. So we're studying as a class social wellness right now. And one of the things I've noticed that for me, understanding other people's charts has given me a little bit more insight into their personality, and therefore a little bit more understanding and patience with friends or family or coworkers that I have. Can you explain why astrology is particularly helpful with this?
So as we were kind of talking about before, studying astrology is really studying somebody's birth chart. So it's kind of like revealing the unconscious that they're maybe not even aware of, to be able for you to really be able to understand somebody else. And just even the fact that you're even looking at somebody else's birth chart already shows that you are willing to figure out how to work that relationship together. So studying astrology is very helpful with understanding others, because you get a glimpse into like the creation of how their personality was made, and like just the stuff that they don't show you, that you'll be like, okay, I'm aware that they are like this, so I know that I need to react like that. But which is, for you, it's a very Capricorn trait, to really like
something that like Capricorns tend to do already. It's
yes. They're very like willing to kind of figure things out. And then we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. So that kind of lends into like just your own personality, that you tend to really do that, whereas other signs sometimes like don't care.
Right.
They're like, whatever, you do whatever, I'm good. You let me do whatever I want to do, and I'll do whatever I want to do. But especially for also, as you were saying, bringing up your children, it's really great to understand like kind of where your children are coming from, because we all have different charts. We're all not the same. So it's kind of like you do need to understand. I think my younger daughter, I just don't, there's too many signs running in my head. I forget what my kids have. I believe that my older daughter has a Virgo rising. Sorry, I have a paper. I'm looking. No, sorry, her rising is Scorpio. So I understand like I do understand like kind of where she's coming from, because I have a Scorpio sun.
Yeah.
So you do tend to realize like where they're going.
I found it helpful for me in one particular working relationship. Understanding a particular coworker sign has given me more patience in dealing with that coworker.
Right, exactly. Like it's just being able to understand what they're not actually telling you.
Right. Like I'm like, it's not personal. They're not doing this on purpose. This is just how they are.
Yeah, how they process, because we can't read other people's minds. So this is kind of like a way to get into that brain without actually reading their mind, because that's not possible. So as I said, like you can kind of see where your personalities blend and support each other, but you also can see where the challenges are going to be and be able to work through them. Again, very Capricorn.
Yeah.
Very Capricorn of you. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's kind of a great segue to my next question, but I don't want to cut you off.
We'll go into it. There's lots of segues.
Okay.
I said most people present like their ego, their sun sign. So as I said, like we don't really see their inner selves coming out in just basic social interactions, like at work, coworker, your own peers. People don't just like, hey, I'm feeling this, like, this
Right.
is my emotion. Like most people don't do that. Right. So instead, be able to understand where someone else is coming from outwardly and innerly, it really helps you to be able to develop and build that relationship in where you're more understanding of each other.
Okay, cool. All right, so can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so kind of going with that theme, as we noted, I'm a Capricorn. So would I work differently then in relationships with different signs? Like, for instance, a Taurus, which would be my husband, a Scorpio, which would be you, and a Cancer, which would be my mother. I'm interested to know about these dynamics.
Hold on, we have a disaster here with my other Scorpio.
Call the father.
Yeah. Just go wash your hands.
Life, man.
All right, so Capricorn suns, a little bit about a Capricorn sun, because that's what we're talking about. Capricorn suns are very dependable and they're very ambitious. You're very focused on your goals and you kind of will do anything in your power to get to that goal. Whereas Aries, which is a fire sign, Capricorn is an earth sign. Aries is very determined and very headstrong, and again, want to get to their goal, but Aries are impatient, whereas Capricorns are patient, because again, earth sign, very grounded.
I thought I developed that patience.
Well, you always had it, and then you just work on it. You know, it's always there. It was a little bit easier for you to work on it because you already had it. Whereas I have an Aries moon, which my impatience, I have to work on. Like, I have to kind of like take a breath and realize, like, just stop.
My daughter has a really hard time with the patience.
Right. So, you know, you have to work on that a little bit. You know, some people have to work on it a little bit more. Whereas you have a earth sun, and then you have double air when your moon and your rising, which you need to work a little bit more on your emotions, but we'll get into that.
I'm really good at working with other people's emotions, not as much my own.
Yes, and that's where your Libra comes in. So as I said, Earth is Capricorn is an earth sign, which is your practicality, and then it's also called a cardinal sign, where you're very initiative, like you just take the initiative to do stuff. This sign, Capricorn, is linked to high achievement. So you'll see a lot of Capricorns, you know, doing a lot of things and just like getting the ball rolling and wanting to get to wherever they need to get to. Right. As opposed to where a Virgo also wants goals and is patient, but they are so focused on the details that sometimes they get lost and forget where the end goal is. Whereas Capricorns kind of see the whole picture and also understand that there needs to be an outline, but is also very have that personality, be able to change along the way in order to get to that.
That really reminds me actually of how I set up like the research paper for my juniors, because I see the whole big picture and then I break it down step by step for all of them to work that way. And then if there needs to be a change to suit like their particular need in the writing, I'm totally flexible to that.
Right. You're right. Exactly. So it's like you're organized, but you're also flexible, which is two very good qualities in building research papers. I believe, because you're not regimented. You're not like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how it needs to go. You're very flexible in that. And again, you take into consideration how your students are processing that information.
Right.
As I said, you're very patient and you kind of like figure out ways to get around it. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And so again, you love lists and outlines. So in relation to like a Taurus sun, which is also an earth sign, it means that you will work well together because you're both very grounded in nature. You're very loyal. You value money, security, and home is, you know, to not be like, you know, very cliche. Home is where the heart is. Like that is where your foundation, that's where it starts. So Tauruses can actually help bring out the sensual, loving enjoyment of life out of the Capricorns, because as I said, Capricorns don't tend to really like feel things. They don't
get like blinders and work focus sometimes.
Yes. So like, you know, Tauruses just love feeling things, like they just, the sensual side of everything, like, you know, something that's really soft, like they'll just kind of like linger on that softness, or just want to like feel everything in that moment, and they take their time to process things a little bit. So whereas, you know, a Capricorn is patient, but they're not patient forever. You know, they want that push. So Taurus, as I said, helps bring out the emotional side, but also creates a little bit of tension, because Taurus is a fixed sign, which means that they're very stubborn, very, very stubborn, and very hard to move. So Taurus is, I think of like this huge mountain that this Capricorn has to get around somehow.
You're not stubborn.
Very, very stubborn.
Very stubborn.
But I like the idea of the mountain, because it also, like in the relationship with the Taurus, I've also found that that's been the one to kind of get me back to center, like slow down. You don't have to do everything, just chill.
Right. So like I said, they're both earth signs, very grounded, and Capricorns will listen. You know, they will listen to reason. They're very logical. You know, again, that's an earth, kind of earth sign thing. So they do work actually very amazing. Yes. Yeah, so my husband's a Capricorn, so, you know, and then we'll kind of get to our relationship with the Scorpios. But I said Capricorn's a fighter, and I said that can be very malleable in any situation. So the Capricorn helps the Taurus be a little bit more flexible. But, you know, Capricorns, if a Taurus isn't going to move, a Capricorn will move around them to get to what they want. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, and a Taurus doesn't care. Like, it's like they're not going to offend Taurus.
Yeah, Taurus isn't going to move.
Right. They're not going to move. They're like, okay, fine. You know, you'll move. It's like, you know, it's like that, like pothole. The pothole's going to be there. It ain't moving for you.
Right.
You know? So you're just like, okay, just go around it, you know, kind of thing. Again, whereas other signs might be just like stuck. They won't move. But in relation to Scorpio, since, you know, I'm a Scorpio, we're best friends. Scorpios are water signs, and that is where the emotions kind of come in. But Scorpios are also fixed signs. So we also can tend to be a little bit stubborn, less flexible, but my other signs kind of overcome that side of the Scorpio. But this is where, again, the Scorpios intense emotions. So Scorpios are very, very deep. You know, they tend to be related. Scorpios tend to be related with the dark. You know, like I love vampires and just like, you know, that dark aspect of life. You know, emotional life, but it's very intense. So the Capricorn hesitates to gravitate towards that intense emotion.
That's interesting.
So the Scorpios can help bring that out of the Capricorn to be able to kind of not necessarily process, but just to be like, it's okay. You know, Scorpios are very dependable, so they help Capricorns feel secure.
I would definitely say that in our relationship, when we first started becoming friends, I was like, are we friends? Are we best friends? What kind of friends are we? Can I text you every day? I don't know. But you were like always there.
Right.
So it ended up being a situation where I started to feel really comfortable being emotionally open with you, because you were so dependable.
Right. Yeah. So like, you know, that's kind of like where we play on each other emotional wise. Like you help me be a little bit more grounded, because I literally have no earth in my chart. I have a little bit Capricorn also in my own chart.
My purple slime, because it's super duper sticky and I don't want it.
Oh my gosh, you have to plug in.
Okay. I'll wait till you come back. Yeah, Miss Snappy's computer's gonna die.
It's gonna die.
All right. She's back.
Okay.
So Scorpios have this tendency to be very possessive around the things that they love and care about. So I guess for a Capricorn, that helps realize that, no, I'm not letting you go. Like, you're not leaving. Like when you go hang out with other friends, I get super jealous, even though I know it's like, it doesn't mean anything. But it just like I will hold on to you forever, you know, until I'm ready to let go.
Which is good, I think, also for me as a Capricorn, because like I tend to be a really loyal person. And so that's good for me because then I know that loyalty is met with my own.
Right. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I was saying that's good for me because I know that loyalty is met with my own loyalty.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't have to be fearful of like losing the relationship.
Right. Yes, exactly. And that was one of my other points too, as well, that we're both very dedicated to any relationship. And as like, we really haven't really had many arguments, but I feel like if we do, like we just say something and it's just gone, you know, like it's just over. It's nothing like, it's like, oh, hey, I realized that, you know, this happened and then blah, blah, blah. And it's just kind of over.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think we've really gotten into an argument because it's always a conversation.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, hey, you know, I saw this, you know, what do you think? You know, I thought this, blah, blah, blah. And then we kind of just go back and forth. Like, it's just a discussion. It's not really like, you know, we're not screaming at each other. So we work really well as a team, as we've seen, because Capricorn is very highly organized. And then a Scorpio has a great like innate powers of judgment. Like, this isn't really good. I don't think we should do this. We should do it this way, kind of thing. And where Capricorn is very malleable, that kind of works out really well because Scorpios have a very good intuitive notion on things.
Yeah, I've learned that from when you started working here at Monmouth. I was like, oh, we work really well together.
Yeah. It just kind of works because, you know, both of us, I tend to be a little bit not necessarily less organized because I mean, I'm not really going to get into this, but I have a lot of planets in the 6th house, which is Virgo, which is work. So for work, for me, I'm very organized and very goal oriented, but you know, we work really well together just because like we both are disciplined. We both have like this thing that we need to do and we just need to do it now, kind of thing. So, you know, that really works well together. As I said, we both prize discipline and accomplishment. Like we need to finish things. Like there's just not things that need to be like left. Like we just can't forget about it. It needs to be done. So that's kind of where, you know, Scorpios and Capricorns kind of get together. As I said, my husband is a Capricorn, so that works out. Hey, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Let's keep talking. And then lastly, your relation to Cancer. So Cancer is another water sign, but the Cancer is literally like the fullest embodiment of what emotions are. Cancer is ruled by the moon. So Cancers feel everything, just feel everything and anything. And they are like the mothers of astrology. Like they are that like caring caretaker mom that just feels all the time. So that's a little bit hard, as I said, for a Capricorn to process because Capricorns don't really like to feel that kind of stuff.
Oh, I was muted. I said it was a little bit hard to grow up with.
Yeah. So you're just like, because Cancers need time to process. They need that like, you know, that space, but Capricorns don't have that emotional space to give them, nor to handle that kind of intense emotions, and can get very, very frustrated with all of those feelings that are coming up. You know, those you want to sit and talk about emotions all day. To a Capricorn, that is the worst day ever.
It is like all day. Like I have no problem like addressing your emotional needs, but then it's like, all right, addressed, move on.
Yeah, right. Whereas
like, no, I want to keep going, and I'm like, I can't.
Right. Where Cancers are like, I just want to talk about this all day. Like,
oh, that's my daughter. And she has the Cancer rising.
Yes. It's just feelings all day, every day. Like it's like Scorpios are not like that. Scorpios are more an inner emotional thing. We're not an outer emotional thing. Cancers are like both.
Yeah.
So Capricorns in this regard, as you said, need to be aware of the lack of you showing emotions. Not that you're not feeling them, but you also don't feel them as intense as a person with any water sign particularly, but particularly Cancers. In their chart. So Cancer's tendencies when confronted with the difficult emotions or tensions in any relationship is not to deal with them, it's to withdraw. Whereas, as you were saying, Capricorn's like becomes more tyrannical and demanding. It's like, no, let's do this, let's process this, let's go.
Sometimes
kind of thing.
I feel so mean when trying to help. my
Yeah.
daughter, because that's exactly the thing. She like kind of goes into herself and withdraws and like gets quiet and kind of moody. And I'm like, if you have a problem, do this.
Right. You're like, this is the solution. This is the obstacle. We need to move around it right now. Whereas Cancer's like, I'm not there yet. Like, I need to feel this and really see where I'm at. And I will come back to you later.
Yes.
Kind of thing. And I don't know my sisters, my one little sister, but I feel like she has that too, where she needs to really process. And I'm like, get this done. Let's go. Right. So I'm an Aries moon. So I'm like, go, done. We're over. Move on. You know, kind of thing. So it's really funny to see that, you know, as I know your mom. And it's just like, oh my God, I was just typing this up. I'm like, oh my God. This is
hilarious.
This is hilarious.
Yeah. Now you know why I am the way I am.
Right. Right. So again, you know that, so that she's not going to tell you that's how she feels, so studying astrology can help you be aware of the other person, even though they're not telling you.
She actually does tell me everything that how she feels,
but she's comfortable with you.
Understanding the astrology, at least it's like, all right, well, it's not just her. It's like, that's just how they are. Because now I see it in my daughter too.
Right. And like,
I have a hard time with this because this is how I am.
Yes. And just to be aware of that.
I'm a jerk. I'm not a jerk.
Right. No, not at all. And, with kids, especially, being a parent, like the kids can't tell you these things. Like they don't know what's happening. So as the adult, you can now understand why they're like that. And yes, it's not perfect, but you have some understanding of where they're coming from. Cool.
Wow. That was super insightful. Let me see. I think I might have another couple questions for you. But I don't know if you did this already. So, is there any insight astrology can give about the relationships I have with other people? Well, you kind of answered that, but like, what about how I communicate? Or you talked about how I handle emotions. So maybe how I communicate.
Well, I was actually going to go into how you handle emotions because we only talked about how your Capricorn handles emotions. We didn't talk about how your moon in Libra actually handles it. So I'm going to go into kind of both.
Okay.
Because those kind of go hand in hand, because your moon is in Libra. So Libra is an air sign. Libra is the balancing scales. That's the symbol of it.
Right.
So that relates to your balance in relationships. Libras just want everybody to get along, everybody to be happy.
Like, why can't we all get along?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like Libra is that typical person that just goes into any situation and be like, why are you fighting? Like you should see this, you should see this, and just get along. Like it just, I don't get it. You just want everybody to be happy-go-lucky and everybody get along and just, be there.
Yeah.
So you tend to be the person that is always trying to make everybody happy. So you kind of like, again, you're very malleable in this aspect. So you tend to get yourself, like you lose yourself. You can, not everybody, but you can lose your own personality by trying to be malleable with everybody getting along.
Right.
So that's kind of like a little bit of a downfall of being the balancer.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation.
Yeah. And like, you are aware of that. So people who aren't aware of it, they don't realize that they're losing. You're kind of giving a little bit of yourself to balance the scales. It's not everybody else who's giving themselves away. You are giving yourselves away. So you can get caught up in that process of making everybody happy. So the way that you communicate is you just want everybody to be happy. You want to figure out what's going on, and you are going to try anything and everything to make it balanced. Yeah. You love more with your heads than with your heart, or head, I should say, your head than your heart. And again, that Capricorn kind of unfortunately supports that.
Yeah.
So in that regards, like that's something that you already know that you need to work on. And I'm sure growing up was a little bit harder to understand that kind of aspect. Having a Cancer mom, you're just like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
What's wrong with her?
Right. You're like, I don't get it. Like, just feel it and move on. Like, let's just do it. But you also have a very open, independent mind that, you try and evaluate the world very dispassionately and kind of rationally. Again, where that's kind of like where the Cancer really, like, I'm just specifically talking Cancer because Cancer is the epitome of emotions.
Right.
So that's kind of where you hit heads a little bit, because you're not really understanding why they can't just move on, and then they're not understanding why you're not processing, you know. But you know, you do try and understand everybody else's emotions except your own. As you said, actually, you said it before. So you do understand everybody's point of view, and you always take that in consideration. But again, like, you never think about how you feel about the situation.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm denying it in any regard. It like just doesn't come up a lot of times. Like I had mentioned to you in the processing of my husband's heart attack, like and this is a normal thing for trauma, to just kind of go into survival mode and do what you do. Right. But even for like a year after that, like I was like, I don't know how I feel.
Right.
I just know what I need to do.
Right. Exactly. Like, you're very task oriented. Again, you know, Capricorns are very task oriented. Like, I see a problem. These are the steps I need to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and then we'll be over it. It's like, well, in regards to emotions, that's not really how it works.
Right. In a perfect world.
Yeah. But, you know, again, like, you're already very highly aware of how you are and how your personality is developing in your own life and with other people, that you already have a benefit, you know, before astrology came in, like, you're already aware of that. It just kind of gave you proof as to what's happening.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Interesting. All right. So another thing that I find interesting is like the compatibility of different signs. Like, I remember being a little kid and looking up like, who's my best sign? Who should I marry? And I remember, like, I can remember all the way back to like, I don't even know. I was probably like 10. And I was like, Capricorn is compatible with Taurus. I must find someone born between April 20th and May 20th. And ironically, I did.
Yeah, right.
Is there any truth to that certain signs are more compatible while others are a little bit more combustible?
So, you know, we did kind of go into that, whereas, you know, we were kind of talking about the positives and the negatives of each sign. So everybody has their chart and everybody has their signs, but there's a dark side and a light side to every sign. So it's kind of like, you know, we call it the high road or the low road. So every sign has that aspect. And that's why even somebody like twins, for example, who have the same exact chart, they display it in the world differently, because there's a high road and there's a low road, and there's also like that middle road there. So in this regard, yes, there are signs that are technically like more compatible than others, but again, I really hesitate to say something like that, because everybody is more than just one sign, and there's other aspects of this chart that can be more compatible. So yeah, you know, we do say Tauruses and Capricorns tend to be a little bit more balanced, because they are both earth signs, and earth signs have very similar qualities. But again, like, there's also something called fixed, mutable, and cardinal signs, and those are kind of different. I touched upon them a little bit. So yes, you know, in regards to what we were talking about, yes, you know, Capricorns and Tauruses do get along a little bit better. It's easier to get along because you are more similar. Whereas, you know, a Capricorn and a Cancer is a little bit tougher to get along, but it really depends on how everybody displaying that particular sign and how aware you are of each one. So I really hesitate to say if there's ones that are more compatible, because as long as you're aware of it, you can always work on it.
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
It's not, you may not, maybe like, you may not be like the best of friends, or, you know, you might not be in a relationship, but in that regard, like, you are understanding of each other, so it will work. But you know, that's kind of like where my thing is.
No, that makes sense. Yeah,
every sign can go together. It just depends on how.
It just depends on the work you put into the relationship.
Yes, right. With
any relationship.
Right, with any relationship. I mean, that's normal.
That makes sense. Cool. I think I only have like one more question, so thank you so much so far. This has been awesome. All right, so if we didn't already address this, is there any other part of my chart that's like worth looking into other than the sun sign, or is that like, I mean, you kind of did address this, but is there anything else that you want to share or that we should know?
I mean, there's a ton of other aspects to it. I like, it would take literally hours for us to actually dive into it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, the big three, the sun, your moon, the rising, is a really good place to start, just to understand how the foundations of somebody's personality was built. You can dive into all the other stuff and really like figure it out, but it gets very overwhelming without an astrologer to actually help guide you through it. Because again, we only looked at 3 of them. There's like, what, 10 others?
Yeah.
Rising sign is not included in the planets. But there's 10 other signs to actually look at to really go into your personality. So you can do it, but it's, the astrologer will help you kind of blend those all together.
Gotcha.
To kind of understand like everything. But I would really look at your sun, moon, and rising just as like
and is there any particular resource that you might say is a really good place to look at this information?
Online?
Look anywhere?
No, I would not kind of look anywhere. If anything, I would look at multiple sites. I know Cafe Astrology is one that is really good. Astro Matrix is another good one to kind of look at. Astro.com is kind of where you can get your chart. I think they do a little bit of explanation, but I'm not sure how much they do. There are a lot of other books, but I would suggest looking at a good couple of things. I know some of my students, they look at, there's apps too.
Yeah.
What is the one that I have? The Pattern is a good app. CoStar is another good app to have. Astro Matrix also has an app that you can look at. So those are all like good. It gives you like a description of like kind of also like where the planets are placed currently, how it affects your chart and things like that. But there's a ton of books to also look at too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that should give them a great start on their project.
Yes. Oh, cool.
So thank you so much for
coming. Welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I said I could talk about this forever.
Absolutely. and maybe we shall talk about it more next year with the Wellness Club. Who knows?
Yes, hopefully.
In person.
Yeah, in person. Yeah, we'll see. We'll get real nerdy.
Well, thank you again, Ms. Sobrinski. I'm going to sign us off. Have a great day, but don't go away because I want to talk to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye.